Have you ever wondered why some people seem to live in constant overflow, while others struggle for every single dollar? And tonight, I want to share with you something that will change everything. Because the difference between those who live in abundance and those who struggle is not effort, and it is not luck, and it is not even worthiness, but it is frequency. And tonight, while you sleep, you will be tuned to the frequency that never fails, and you will wake tomorrow already aligned with infinite provision that flows like a river of gold through your life. There is a frequency of infinite provision that flows through this universe constantly like an invisible current of pure possibility. And most people cannot access it, not because they are unworthy, but because they are tuned to the wrong station. And Florence Scovel Shinn discovered this frequency in 1925 when she was living in New York City, and she called it the frequency of the I am. And she said, when you tune into this, frequency supply overflows naturally, and you do not need to chase it or beg for it or work desperately for it, because overflow becomes your natural state, like breathing becomes natural. Once you are born, Florence understood what the ancient mystics knew, that the universe is made of vibration, and every vibration carries information and attracts matching vibrations. And when you vibrate at the frequency of infinite provision, the entire cosmos conspires to bring you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. And this is not magic, but physics, and this is not coincidence, but correspondence. And tonight, you will be tuned to this frequency while you rest. You can close your eyes now, and everything that needs to happen will happen while you rest. And I want to tell you about Eleanor Martinez, who was 58 years old when her entire world collapsed like a house of cards in a windstorm. And Eleanor had worked as a senior accountant for the same manufacturing company for 23 years, and she thought she was secure, and she thought she had built a solid foundation. But on a cold Tuesday morning in February, when the snow was falling like tiny crystals against the office windows, her entire department was eliminated due to corporate downsizing, and Eleanor walked out of that building at exactly 11:47 in the morning, carrying a small cardboard box with her personal items, and she realized that everything she had worked for was gone in an instant, like smoke dissipating in the winter air. Eleanor had a mortgage of $3,200 a month on her modest ranch home in suburban Cleveland, with its blue shutters and small front porch where she used to sit drinking coffee on weekend mornings. And she had car payments of $643 for her reliable Honda Civic that still smelled faintly of the vanilla air freshener she had hung from the rearview mirror, and she had credit card debt of $21,478. Dollars accumulated over years of small emergencies and careful living, and her savings account had exactly $5,891, which meant she could survive for exactly 1 month and 18 days if she spent nothing on food or gas or utilities or any other necessity. And for the first time in her adult life, Eleanor felt the cold grip of true financial terror creeping up her spine like ice water. The unemployment office was a beige building that smelled like disinfectant and desperation, and the fluorescent lights hummed overhead like trapped insects. And when Eleanor sat in the hard plastic chair waiting for her number to be called, she noticed her hands were shaking, and she could hear her heart beating in her ears like a drum, and the other people in the waiting room looked as lost as she felt. And when her number finally appeared on the digital display, she walked to window number 7, where a tired woman with thick glasses and a nameplate that read, Janet told her she would receive $1,600 a month in benefits, which was not even half of her mortgage payment. And Eleanor felt something inside her chest cave in like a building collapsing floor by floor. Eleanor applied for job after job, and she printed her resume on expensive paper and bought interview clothes she could not afford, and companies told her she was overqualified, or they were looking for someone younger, or they had hired someone internal, and she watched her savings disappear dollar by dollar, day by day, and the numbers in her bank account dropped like a countdown to disaster, and she started buying generic brands at the grocery store, and then she stopped buying meat, and then she stopped going out entirely, and she sat in her empty house watching the shadows move across the walls as the sun set earlier each day. After 4 months, she received the foreclosure notice printed on official letterhead that felt thick and final between her fingers and the eye. Words on the page seemed to blur together as she read them over and over, and after 7 months, she lost her house and had to move into a tiny one-bedroom apartment in a complex called Sunset Manor, where the hallways smelled like old cigarettes and cat litter, and the elevator made grinding noises that reminded her of her broken dreams. And her new apartment had thin walls where she could hear her neighbors arguing at night, and a kitchen window that looked out onto a parking lot filled with cars that had seen better days. Eleanor's car was repossessed on a Thursday morning in October, while she was inside the grocery store trying to buy food with her last $47, and she had carefully selected 2 bags of rice and 3 cans of soup. And when she came out with her groceries, she saw the empty parking space where her car had been, and she stood there holding her plastic bags, feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. And that night, she sat on the floor of her empty apartment eating cold soup directly from the can with a plastic spoon, and she wondered how she had fallen so far so fast, and she cried until no more tears would come. It was during this darkest moment, when Eleanor felt like she was drowning in an ocean of despair, that she found a worn copy of Florence Scovel Shinn's book at a garage sale for 50 cents, and the book had a faded green cover and pages that were yellowed with age. And as she read about the frequency of infinite provision, she felt something stirring in her chest, like a pilot light being lit after months of darkness. And Eleanor learned that provision is not something you earn through struggle, but something you tune into, like a radio station. And that night, lying on her mattress on the floor, she began to repeat the words, "I am supplied, I am supplied, I am supplied." And she fell asleep with these words on her lips, like a prayer. For 48 hours, Eleanor continued to repeat this decree every time she felt the panic rising in her throat, and every time the voice in her head told her she was foolish for believing in something so simple. And every time she wanted to give up and crawl under the covers and never come out, and on the 3rd morning at exactly 7:23, while she was making instant coffee with hot water from the tap, her phone rang with a number she did not recognize. The woman on the phone introduced herself as Patricia Walsh from Executive Solutions, and her voice was warm and professional, and she said they had been looking for someone with Eleanor's exact experience to help a growing medical device company reorganize their entire accounting system. And when Patricia mentioned the salary, Eleanor almost dropped the phone because the number was $87,400 per year, which was more than she had ever made before, and the position came with full benefits and a signing bonus of $10,000. And Eleanor felt her knees go weak with relief, but that was not all. Because 3 days later, Eleanor received another call from her landlord, who said his mother had passed away and left him a beautiful 2-story house just 15 minutes from Eleanor's new job, and he wanted to offer it to Eleanor for free in exchange for maintaining the property and taking care of his mother's garden. And when Eleanor drove to see the house, she discovered it was larger and more beautiful than the home she had lost, and it sat on 2 acres of land with mature oak trees and a pond where ducks came to swim, and the kitchen had windows that looked out onto rolling hills that seemed to stretch forever. And then, 1 week later, Eleanor's neighbor knocked on her door holding keys to a 1978 Mustang convertible that had belonged to his late brother, and the car was cherry red with chrome bumpers and white leather seats. And he said his brother would have wanted someone who appreciated classic cars to have it, and he handed Eleanor the keys and walked away before she could protest. And Eleanor stood in her driveway holding the keys to a car that was worth more than any car she had ever owned. And she realized that in less than 3 weeks, her entire life had transformed from complete devastation to overflow that exceeded her wildest dreams. Eleanor later said that the most amazing thing was not just what happened, but how it happened, because every single piece fell into place with perfect timing and perfect orchestration, as if an invisible hand was moving all the pieces on a cosmic chessboard. And she realized that the frequency of infinite provision had been there all along, waiting for her to tune in, and that her 48 hours of decreeing had not created the abundance, but had simply aligned her with the abundance that was already flowing toward her. If this teaching resonates with you, and if you feel you were guided here, then touch the subscribe button now. And it is not for me, but it is so that you receive each new teaching from Florence Scovel Shinn at the exact moment your soul needs it, and the algorithm becomes your servant, delivering wisdom precisely when your heart is most open to receive. And when you click that button, you are saying yes to your own transformation and yes to the frequency of infinite provision. And in the comments, write only these words: infinite supply. And this is not an affirmation, but a decree. And when you write these words, you activate collective witness, and thousands of souls write these same words, and the field strengthens for everyone, and the frequency of infinite provision becomes accessible to all who align with it, and your comment becomes a beacon that calls more abundance into your life and into the lives of everyone who reads it. If you want to support this spiritual work, there is a donation link in the description. And when you donate, you can also leave a personal message about what you are going through, and you will receive a personal response with guidance, because this work is supported by those who have been transformed and who wish to help others find the same frequency of overflow. And every dollar you give multiplies and returns to you in ways you cannot imagine. If you choose not to do this right now, that is perfectly fine, and your path is your own. But know that this is the moment of greatest power, when the frequency is activated and the field is open. So do it if you feel aligned, because the universe is conspiring to support your transformation, and every action you take in alignment with infinite provision activates more provision in your life and creates a momentum that carries you into abundance. Now you can relax completely, and you do not need to do anything else and everything I will share enters you while you rest, and your subconscious is awake and alert, and it absorbs every word, like a sponge absorbs water. And if you fall asleep in the middle, that is perfect, because when you wake, the seed will already be planted, and the frequency will already be activated within you, and abundance will begin flowing toward you like a river flowing toward the sea. Florence Scovel Shinn lived in New York City during the Roaring '20s, when the city pulsed with energy and possibility, but also with great inequality, and she walked those crowded streets lined with magnificent buildings and saw how some people seemed to live in constant abundance, wearing fine clothes and riding in expensive automobiles, while others struggled for basic necessities, standing in bread lines and sleeping in doorways, and she wondered what created this difference. And through years of deep study and spiritual practice and personal experimentation, she discovered that provision is not earned through effort or hard work, but accessed through frequency, like tuning into a radio station that broadcasts abundance 24 hours a day. She lived on the Upper East Side in a modest fourth-floor apartment filled with books and paintings and fresh flowers that she bought every week, even when money was tight, because she understood that beauty attracts beauty and abundance attracts abundance. And she spent her mornings writing at a small wooden desk by the window where she could watch the sunrise, paint the buildings gold. And she spent her afternoons counseling people who came to her desperate for answers about money and relationships and health. And Florence discovered that underneath every problem was the same core issue, which was disconnection from the frequency of infinite supply that flows through all creation like an invisible river of pure possibility. Florence understood through direct experience and mystical insight that the universe operates on vibrational principles, and that everything, including money and opportunities and resources, exists first as frequency in the invisible realm before it manifests as form in the visible world. And she taught that when you align your inner frequency with the frequency of infinite provision, the outer world reorganizes itself to match your inner state, like iron filings arranging themselves around a magnet. And this is not wishful thinking or positive psychology, but spiritual law as reliable as gravity. And Florence proved this principle thousands of times through the people she helped transform their lives from scarcity to abundance. She called this the frequency of the I Am, because when you truly know deep in your bones, I am supplied, Not "I will be supplied," or "I hope to be supplied," but "I am supplied in this eternal moment." You tune into the eternal present where all provision already exists in unlimited quantities, and you stop trying to create supply through struggle and effort, and instead you allow supply to flow through you like a clear channel through which the infinite can express itself. And Florence said the words, "I am," are the most powerful words in any language because they declare your identity, and your identity determines your reality, and your reality determines your experience. The winter of 1926 was particularly harsh in New York City, and snow fell continuously for days, turning the streets into rivers of gray slush. And it was during this cold season that Mrs. Dorothy Hammond came to Florence carrying a burden that felt heavier than the snow that covered the city. And Dorothy was 62 years old and a widow who had been living alone in a small 2-room apartment in Brooklyn ever since her husband passed away 3 years earlier, leaving her with debts she never knew existed. And she owed $3,600 to various creditors, which in those days was an enormous sum equivalent to perhaps $50,000 today. And Dorothy had only 18 cents in her worn leather purse and no prospects for income, and she was facing eviction. Within 1 week, Dorothy climbed the 4 flights of stairs to Florence's apartment on a Tuesday afternoon, when the sky was the color of pewter, and her breath formed small clouds in the cold air of the unheated stairwell. And when she knocked on the door, her knuckles were red from the cold. And when Florence opened the door, she saw a woman who looked defeated by life, but whose eyes still held a spark of hope. And Dorothy sat in Florence's parlor, wearing a worn black coat that had belonged to her mother, and her hands trembled not just from the cold, but from fear, as she explained her situation in a voice that barely rose above a whisper. Florence listened with complete attention and compassion as Dorothy told her story. And then she said something that shocked Dorothy, because instead of offering sympathy or practical advice, Florence looked directly into Dorothy's eyes and said, "Dorothy, you are not poor. You are simply tuned to the frequency of lack, but your true nature is infinite supply, because you are a spiritual being made in the image of the infinite, and we are going to tune you back to your natural frequency right now, in this moment." And Dorothy felt something shift inside her chest, as if a door had opened that had been locked for years. Florence taught Dorothy to repeat these specific words every night before sleep. "I am supplied from the infinite storehouse of God." And Dorothy thought this was foolish because her bank account was empty, and her creditors were demanding payment, and her landlord had already given her notice. But Florence explained with gentle authority that the bank account is not the source, but only the channel, and the true source is infinite and never runs dry and is always available to those who know how to access it. And Dorothy agreed to try this teaching for 7 days and nights because she had nothing left to lose. On the first night, Dorothy lay in her small bed in her cold apartment, listening to the sounds of the city outside her window, and she began to repeat the words, "I am supplied from the infinite storehouse of God." And she felt ridiculous because her reality showed the complete opposite. And her stomach was empty, and her apartment was cold because she could not afford heat. But Florence had told her that feelings follow thoughts, not the other way around. And Dorothy continued to repeat these words like a mantra until she fell asleep. And in her dreams, she saw herself surrounded by abundance and provision, flowing to her from all directions like golden light. On the second night, Dorothy repeated the same words, and she noticed that the panic in her chest that had been her constant companion for months was softer. And on the third night, she felt a strange peace that she had not experienced since before her husband died, and the words began to feel less foreign in her mouth. And on the fourth night, something extraordinary happened, because she actually felt supplied, even though nothing in her outer circumstances had changed. And Dorothy realized she was beginning to match the frequency of provision rather than the frequency of lack. On the morning of the 5th day, Dorothy was making weak tea with a tea bag she had used 3 times already when she heard footsteps on the stairs and then a knock at her door. And when she opened it, she found a young man in a postal uniform holding a letter. And when Dorothy saw the return address was from a law firm in Philadelphia, Her heart began to race because she thought it might be more bad news. But when she opened the envelope with shaking hands, she discovered that a great aunt she had never met, named Millicent, whom she had heard mentioned only once in family stories, had passed away and left Dorothy an inheritance. When Dorothy read the amount written in precise legal handwriting, her legs gave out and she sat down hard on her kitchen chair because the inheritance was exactly $3,600, which was the exact amount she owed to her creditors, plus an additional $1,000. And Dorothy stared at the letter, reading it over and over again to make sure she was not dreaming. And then she put on her coat and walked through the snow to Florence's apartment, carrying the letter like a sacred document. When Florence opened the door, Dorothy was crying and laughing at the same time, and her cheeks were flushed from the cold and from excitement. And she said, "Florence, how did you know this would happen?" And she held up the letter with trembling hands, and Florence smiled with the serene confidence of someone who understands spiritual law, and she said, "Dorothy, I did not know this specific thing would happen, but I know the law, and when you tune into the frequency of infinite provision, the universe reorganizes itself to match your frequency, and supply appears in perfect ways at perfect timing." Florence invited Dorothy into her warm apartment and made her hot tea and explained that Dorothy's great-aunt had actually passed away 6 weeks before Dorothy even met Florence. But the legal paperwork had been delayed due to winter storms, and the letter had been misdirected twice and arrived at precisely the moment when Dorothy had aligned with the frequency of provision. And Florence said, "This is how the invisible world works, and what appears to be coincidence is actually correspondence, and everything in the visible world responds to the frequency you hold in the invisible world." Dorothy paid all her debts within 1 week and used the remaining $1,000 to start a small catering business from her apartment. And she discovered she had a natural talent for cooking, and within 6 months, she was earning more money than she had ever earned before, and she was able to move to a larger apartment with heat and electric lights, and she lived comfortably for the rest of her life. And she never forgot that provision is not a destination, but a frequency. And when you match this frequency, supply overflows naturally, and you do not create it, but you allow it to flow through you. Florence taught that the words "I am" are like tuning forks that adjust your frequency to match the frequency of infinite provision. And every time you say, "I am supplied with complete conviction," you send a signal into the quantum field that reorganizes probability and possibility around you. And during sleep, this process is amplified by a factor of 7, because the conscious mind, with all its doubts and fears, is not interfering. And the subconscious can receive the programming directly, like a clean computer receiving new software. While you sleep, your subconscious reorders reality according to the decree. And you do not need to understand the mechanism of how this works, but only to allow it to work through you. And Florence said, "Faith is not believing in something you cannot see, but knowing something you cannot yet touch." And when you rest with the words, "I am supplied," flowing through your consciousness like a gentle river, you are not hoping for provision, you are claiming provision. And provision must respond to your claim, because this is universal law, as reliable as the law of gravity. Word is not description, but creation. And this is the secret that Florence Scovel Shinn discovered through years of experimentation and observation, that when you speak a word, you are not merely describing reality, you are literally creating reality. Because sound is vibration, and vibration is the fundamental building block of all matter and energy in the universe. And when you speak the words, "I am supplied," you are not talking about supply. You are actually generating supply in the quantum field through the specific frequency of those sounds. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And this ancient teaching that Florence understood so deeply tells us that sound preceded form and vibration preceded manifestation. And every word you speak sends ripples through the invisible fabric of reality, like dropping a stone into a still pond. And these ripples travel outward, carrying the information of your decree and attracting matching frequencies back to you with mathematical precision. The human voice, when used with spiritual authority, becomes a key that unlocks dimensions of possibility, and Florence taught that there are specific combinations of sounds that open gateways in the quantum field. And the phrase "I am supplied" contains the most powerful vibration in the English language, because the words "I am" call forth the creative power of the infinite, and the word "supplied" establishes the specific frequency of unlimited provision flowing toward you. I want to share with you the remarkable story of William Stevens, who was 61 years old. When he learned this principle and discovered that his voice could literally reorganize his financial reality, and William lived on a small farm in rural Ohio, where his family had grown corn and soybeans for 4 generations, and the farm had been passed down from father to son for over 100 years. But William was about to lose everything because of a series of bad harvests and rising costs and changing weather patterns that made farming more difficult than it had ever been. William had a debt of $143,000 to the bank that held the mortgage on his 600-acre farm, and the monthly payments were $4,800, which was more than he could earn during good months and impossible during bad months. And the drought of that summer had destroyed most of his crops, and the insurance company was refusing to pay the full amount they had promised. And William calculated that he had maybe 90 days before the bank would foreclose on the property that had been in his family since 1876. William was a practical man who had never been interested in spiritual matters or metaphysical teachings, but his neighbor Frank had given him a book by Florence Scovel Shinn and said it had helped his own family during difficult times, and William was desperate enough to try anything. So one evening, after working all day trying to salvage what he could from his damaged crops, he sat in his kitchen reading about the power of the spoken word and how vibration could reorganize physical circumstances. The book explained that every word carries a specific frequency, and when you speak words of supply and abundance with conviction and authority, you tune your personal electromagnetic field to match the frequency of infinite provision. And William learned that during sleep, this process is amplified because the subconscious mind, which controls 95% of your reality, accepts programming more readily when the conscious mind is not interfering with doubt and fear and logical objections. That first night, William felt foolish lying in his bed repeating, "I am supplied." But he was facing the loss of everything his family had built, so he continued to repeat these words until he fell asleep, and he noticed that the words began to vibrate in his chest like a tuning fork, and he could feel the sound resonating in his bones, and something about the specific frequency of these words made him feel calmer than he had felt in months. William continued this practice for 7 nights, and on the 8th morning he received a phone call from someone he had never heard of, and the man on the phone introduced himself as David Chen, and he said he represented a group of investors who were looking for organic farmland to lease for a new sustainable agriculture project, and they had heard about William's farm through the County Agricultural Extension Office, and they wanted to know if William would be interested in a partnership arrangement. When William met with David Chen the following Tuesday, he discovered that the investment group was willing to pay William $300,000 over 5 years to lease half of his land for their organic farming project, and they would also provide all the equipment and labor needed to restore the soil and implement new growing methods, and William would continue to farm the other half of his land using their advanced techniques and their financial backing. The contract was structured so that William would receive $60,000 immediately, which was enough to bring his mortgage payments current, and then $12,000 every month for 5 years, which was more than enough to cover all his expenses and save money for the first time in years. And the investors would also share 50% of the profits from the organic produce. They grew on his land, which could add another $20,000 to $30,000 annually. But the most extraordinary part of the agreement was that after 5 years, William would have the option to purchase the equipment and continue the organic farming operation himself with their ongoing support and consultation. And by that time, the improved soil and established market relationships would make his farm worth double what it was worth before. And William realized that what had seemed like certain destruction was actually leading to the greatest opportunity of his life. William later learned that David Chen had been driving through the area on his way to evaluate another property when his car broke down just 3 miles from William's farm, and while waiting for the tow truck, he walked around and noticed the quality of William's soil and the way the land was laid out, and he decided to investigate further. And this led to the phone call that changed everything. And William understood that this was not coincidence but correspondence, because his nightly decreeing had adjusted his frequency and attracted this perfect solution. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that when you decree "I am supplied," you are not asking the universe for supply. You are commanding supply to appear because you are declaring your true spiritual identity as a child of the infinite storehouse, and supply must respond to this command because it is the nature of the universe to respond to spiritual authority. And when you understand that you are not separate from the source, but you are an expression of the source, then your words carry divine power. The mechanism works through what modern quantum physics calls the observer effect, which states that the act of observation changes the behavior of subatomic particles. And when you observe yourself as supplied rather than lacking, you literally change the quantum probability patterns around you, and possibilities that were previously invisible suddenly become visible, and opportunities that were previously blocked suddenly become available. During sleep, your brain waves shift into theta frequency, which is the same frequency used in hypnosis and deep meditation. And in this state, your subconscious mind can reprogram your personal electromagnetic field to match the frequency of your spoken decrees. And over a period of 48 to 72 hours, this new frequency begins to attract corresponding experiences and opportunities and resources from the quantum field. When you speak the words, "I am supplied," while in a state of rest or sleep, you are essentially programming your energy field to broadcast a signal that says, "I am a perfect match for abundance and provision." And the universe responds to this signal by reorganizing probability and possibility around you. And what Florence called demonstration begins to occur as your outer circumstances rearrange themselves to match your inner frequency. Continue resting now and let these words penetrate deeply into your subconscious, because your voice is becoming attuned to the frequency of infinite provision, and every word you speak with spiritual authority creates ripples in the quantum field that attract corresponding vibrations of abundance. And tonight, while you sleep, your personal electromagnetic field is being adjusted to match the frequency of overflow. And what comes next is understanding how identity determines manifestation. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are. And this is the fundamental principle that separates those who live in overflow from those who struggle for every dollar. Because most people try to get abundance while remaining identified with lack. But the universe can only give you more of what you already are in consciousness, and identity precedes manifestation just as the seed precedes the tree. And Florence Scovel Shinn understood that when you truly know "I am supplied," not "I will be supplied," but "I am supplied," you are no longer seeking supply. You are embodying supply. Your identity is not your personality or your circumstances or your history, but your deepest sense of who. You are in relationship to the infinite, and when you identify yourself as supplied, you align with your true spiritual nature as an outlet for divine abundance. And the universe has no choice but to confirm this identity through your experience, because the law of correspondence states that your outer world must match your inner world. The words "I am" are the most powerful words in any language, because they declare your being, not your doing. And when you say "I am supplied," you are not describing what you hope will happen, but what is already true in the eternal dimension where all provision exists in perfect abundance, and you are simply claiming what has always belonged to you as a child of the infinite source. I want to tell you about Nancy Cooper, who was 55 years old when she learned to embody this identity. And Nancy was a single mother who had been struggling financially ever since her divorce 8 years earlier, and she worked as a nurse at a county hospital, making $38,000 a year, which was barely enough to cover her basic expenses, and she had been living paycheck to paycheck for so long that she had begun to think of herself as someone who would always struggle with money. Nancy had 3 teenage children, and the oldest was about to start college, and Nancy had no idea how she would pay for tuition and room and board, and she had already been rejected for several student loans because her credit score was too low, and she lay awake at night worrying about how she would provide for her children and give them the opportunities they deserved. And the stress was affecting her health and her relationship with her children. Nancy lived in a small 3-bedroom house that she rented for $1,800 a month, and the house needed repairs that the landlord refused to make, and Nancy could not afford to fix herself. And her car was a 15-year-old Honda with over 200,000 miles, and it needed new tires and brake pads, and she was constantly worried that it would break down and leave her unable to get to work, and everything in her life felt precarious and uncertain. One evening, Nancy's friend Maria brought her a book by Florence Scovel Shinn and told Nancy that these teachings had helped her own family move from poverty to prosperity. And Nancy was skeptical because she had always been practical and focused on working hard and saving money. But Maria insisted that Nancy try the teachings for 30 days, and Nancy agreed, because she was willing to try anything that might help her situation. Nancy learned that her fundamental problem was not lack of money, but lack of identity as a supplied person. And she had been thinking of herself as someone who struggled and someone who never had enough. And this identity was creating experiences that matched her sense of self. And Florence taught that you must treat yourself as the person you already are in the divine plan, not as the person you appear to be in current circumstances. The first step was changing her internal dialogue from "I cannot afford this" to "I choose not to purchase this right now," and from "I never have enough money" to "money flows to me easily and naturally." And Nancy discovered that these small changes in language began to shift her sense of identity from lacking to supplied, and she noticed that she felt different when she used words that affirmed her abundance rather than her limitations. Nancy began to repeat the decree, "I am a channel for infinite abundance" every night before sleep, and she repeated these words with as much conviction as she could muster, even though her bank account showed only $347, and she had bills due that totaled more than her monthly income. And Nancy learned that feelings follow identity, not the other way around, and she needed to embody the identity of abundance before she could feel abundant. After 1 week of this practice, Nancy noticed that she was walking differently and speaking differently and making decisions differently. And instead of automatically saying no to things because she could not afford them, she began to ask herself, what would an abundant person do in this situation? And she started making choices that aligned with her new identity as a channel for infinite supply. On the 10th day of her practice, Nancy was working her shift at the hospital when she overheard a conversation between 2 doctors about a private nursing position that was available for someone with Nancy's exact qualifications, and the position paid $75,000 a year, which was almost double what she was currently making, and it included full benefits and a signing bonus of $10,000. Nancy approached one of the doctors after her shift and expressed interest in the position, and the doctor was surprised because they had been looking for someone with Nancy's specific combination of experience and skills for several months and had been considering hiring a traveling nurse at much higher cost, and the doctor gave Nancy the contact information for the family who needed the private nurse. The position was caring for an elderly woman named Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, who had suffered a stroke and needed round-the-clock care in her beautiful home in the wealthiest part of town. And when Nancy met with Mrs. Patterson's daughter, she was immediately hired, and the daughter explained that they had been through several nurses who were not the right fit, and they had been praying for someone with Nancy's combination of medical skills and personal warmth. The job came with an apartment above the garage that Nancy could live in rent-free if she wanted to be available for overnight emergencies. And when Nancy saw the apartment, she could hardly believe it because it was larger and more beautiful than any place she had ever lived, and it had 2 bedrooms, so her younger children could live there with her. And it overlooked a garden where Mrs. Patterson grew roses, and Herbs, Mrs. Patterson's daughter, also mentioned that they had been looking for someone to help with Mrs. Patterson's foundation, which provided scholarships for nursing students, and she asked if Nancy would be interested in helping to coordinate the scholarship program, and this position paid an additional $15,000 a year, and came with the benefit that Nancy's own children would be eligible for educational scholarships through the foundation. Within 3 weeks, Nancy had moved into the beautiful apartment and was earning $90,000 a year, and her children were enrolled in better schools, and her oldest daughter received a full scholarship for nursing school, and Nancy realized that her identity as a channel for infinite abundance had attracted circumstances that perfectly matched this new sense of self. Nancy later said that the most important lesson she learned was that abundance is not something you acquire, but something you embody. And when you truly know I am supplied at the level of identity, the universe rearranges itself to prove this truth to you. And opportunities appear that were invisible when you identified yourself as lacking. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that identity operates like a magnet, attracting experiences that match your sense of self, and when you identify yourself as supplied, you become a vibrational match for abundance, and supply flows toward you naturally. Because this is the path of least resistance in the quantum field, and you are no longer swimming against the current, but flowing with the river of infinite provision. The identity I am supplied is not something you create, but something you remember, because it is your true nature as a spiritual being. And when you align with this identity, you stop trying to get abundance and start allowing abundance to flow through you like electricity flowing through a wire that offers no resistance. While you sleep tonight, your identity is shifting from lacking to supplied, and your subconscious is accepting this new identity as your truth. And tomorrow, you will wake with a different sense of yourself, and you will begin to make choices and take actions that align with your identity as a channel for infinite abundance, and continue resting. Because what comes next is understanding how to work with resistance rather than against it. The ego mind fights against abundance, not because it wants you to suffer, but because it believes struggle keeps you safe, and resistance to good is one of the strangest phenomena in human psychology. But Florence Scovel Shinn understood that what we resist persists, and what we embrace dissolves. And she taught that resistance is not your enemy, but your teacher, showing you exactly where you need to apply spiritual understanding and surrender. Most people think resistance means they are doing something wrong, but resistance actually means you are doing something right, because resistance only appears when you are moving towards something better, and the ego creates resistance to keep you in familiar territory, even if that territory is painful, because the ego prefers known suffering to unknown joy. And this is why people often sabotage themselves just when abundance begins to flow. Florence taught that there are 7 primary forms of resistance to abundance, and each one serves a specific function in the ego's strategy to maintain control. And when you understand these patterns, you can work with resistance instead of against it, and transform a resistance into rocket fuel for your manifestation. And she said resistance is not a wall, but a doorway. And the key is surrender, not struggle. I want to share with you the profound journey of Robert Jackson, who was 63 years old when he encountered every form of resistance to abundance in a period of just 14 days. And Robert was a retired high school principal who had always been financially conservative, and he lived on a modest pension that covered his basic needs but left little room for enjoyment or emergency expenses. Robert had been living in the same small apartment for 12 years and driving the same car for 18 years and shopping at discount stores and clipping coupons because he believed this was the responsible way to live. And he had always been suspicious of people who talked about manifesting abundance because he thought they were either delusional or dishonest, and he prided himself on being realistic and practical. But when Robert's younger brother died unexpectedly and left him a modest inheritance of $23,000, Robert found himself in an unusual position of having extra money for the first time in his adult life. And he also found a worn copy of Florence Scovel Shinn's book among his brother's possessions, and he decided to read it as a way of feeling connected to his brother, who had apparently been studying these teachings. Robert learned about the principle of infinite supply and the power of the spoken word, and even though his logical mind rejected these ideas, something deeper in him was intrigued, and he decided to experiment with the teaching "I am supplied" as a way of honoring his brother's memory, and he began repeating these words every night before sleep without really expecting anything to happen. On the third night of this practice, Robert had a vivid dream in which he saw himself living in a beautiful house by a lake and driving a car that he had always wanted and traveling to places he had always dreamed of visiting. And when he woke up, he felt a strange mixture of excitement and terror because the dream had felt so real and so possible that it shook his fundamental beliefs about what was realistic for someone in his situation. The first form of resistance appeared immediately, and it was logical resistance, and Robert's mind began generating dozens of reasons why abundance was impossible for him at his age and with his limited income. And he started calculating how long his inheritance would last and how much he could safely spend, and his logical mind kept insisting that dreaming of abundance was foolish and irresponsible. But Robert continued the practice anyway, and on the seventh day, he received a phone call from a former student who had become a successful real estate developer, and the student wanted to offer Robert a consulting position, helping to design educational programs for low-income communities, and the position paid $3,000 a month for part-time work, and Robert felt excited about the opportunity. The second form of resistance appeared as social resistance, and Robert began worrying about what his friends and neighbors would think if he started earning more money and living differently. And he realized he had been unconsciously keeping himself small to fit in with people who complained about money. And he was afraid that if he became abundant, his relationships would change and he would lose the connections that gave his life meaning. The third form of resistance was unworthiness resistance. And Robert began questioning whether he deserved to have more when so many people had less, and he felt guilty about the inheritance and guilty about the consulting opportunity. And he started thinking that maybe he should just give the money away because he had not earned it through his own efforts. The fourth resistance was fear of responsibility, and Robert realized that with abundance comes the responsibility to manage it wisely and to use it in service of something greater than himself. And he began to feel overwhelmed by the decisions he would need to make and the ways his life would need to change, and he was comfortable with his simple life and afraid of the complexity that abundance might bring. The fifth resistance was fear of loss, and Robert realized that the more you have, the more you can lose. And he began imagining all the ways abundance could disappear, and he started researching market crashes and economic disasters, and he convinced himself that it was safer to remain poor than to risk having abundance and losing it. The sixth resistance was spiritual resistance, and Robert began wondering if seeking abundance was somehow unspiritual or selfish. And he had grown up with religious teachings that suggested poverty was more virtuous than wealth, and he worried that God might disapprove of his desires for a more comfortable life. The seventh resistance was fear of change itself, and Robert realized that even positive change disrupts the familiar patterns of life and requires you to become a different person, and he was comfortable with his identity as someone who lived simply and modestly, and he was not sure he wanted to become someone who lived abundantly. For 4 days, these resistances battled in Robert's mind, and he almost decided to put the inheritance in savings and forget about abundance altogether. But on the evening of the 11th day, he remembered something his brother had written in the margin of the Florence Scovel Shinn book. And his brother had written, "Resistance is not a wall, but a river, and the way through is not around, but surrender." That night, Robert made a different choice, and instead of fighting against the resistance, he decided to surrender to it. And he said out loud, "I surrender my resistance to abundance. I surrender my need to understand how it works. I surrender my need to control the process, and I surrender my fear of change, and I allow infinite supply to flow through me in whatever way serves the highest good." The moment Robert spoke these words of surrender, something shifted in his energy field, and he felt a deep peace that he had not experienced since childhood. And he realized that resistance was not trying to protect him from abundance, but trying to protect him from the ego death that comes with allowing yourself to be supplied by something greater than your own efforts. Within 48 hours, Robert received 2 more opportunities that perfectly matched his skills and interests, and by the end of the month, he was earning more money than he had ever earned even during his working years, and he used part of his abundance to establish a scholarship fund in his brother's memory, and part to travel to places he had always wanted to see, and part to move into a small house with a garden where he could grow his own vegetables. Robert later said that the key insight was understanding that resistance is not opposition, but information, and each form of resistance was showing him an area where he needed to expand his identity and surrender his limitations, and when he stopped fighting resistance and started surrendering to abundance, the resistance transformed into flow. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that surrender is not giving up, but giving in to the greater intelligence that knows how to supply you better than your ego mind knows how to supply you. And when you surrender your resistance, you allow the infinite to work through you without interference, and abundance flows naturally. Because flow is the nature of the universe. You do not need to overcome resistance, but only to witness it with compassion and understanding, and then choose surrender over struggle and allowance over control. And while you rest tonight, the resistances in your subconscious are dissolving and being replaced with trust and openness. And tomorrow, you will find it easier to allow abundance, because resistance is already transforming into receptivity. The universe speaks in symbols, not words and signs, not speeches. And when you tune into the frequency of infinite provision, the cosmos begins communicating with you through a language of synchronicity and correspondence that Florence Scovel Shinn called the language of the invisible. And she taught that signs are not coincidences, but confirmations that your frequency is aligned and your demonstration is already in motion. In the quantum field, signs appear in 3 distinct waves, and each wave carries different information about the progress of your manifestation. And the first wave consists of microsigns, which are subtle internal shifts and gentle external confirmations that most people miss because they are looking for dramatic proof instead of delicate communication. And these microsigns appear within hours of aligning with infinite provision. The second wave consists of medium signs, which are external synchronicities and meaningful coincidences that are too specific to be random and too perfect to be accidental. And these medium signs usually appear within days or weeks, and they serve as bridges between the invisible realm, where your demonstration is already complete, and the visible realm, where it is beginning to take form. The third wave consists of macro signs, which are undeniable manifestations and life-changing opportunities that completely alter your circumstances. And these macro signs appear when your frequency is fully stabilized and your identity is completely aligned with infinite provision, and they represent the full flowering of what began as a subtle shift in consciousness. I want to share with you the remarkable story of Sandra Williams, who was 59 years old when she learned to read the language of signs, and Sandra had been working as a receptionist at a dental office for 17 years, making $26,000 a year, which was barely enough to cover her expenses, and she had been struggling to save money for retirement and feeling anxious about her financial future. Sandra lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment, and she had no family nearby and few close friends, and she spent most of her evenings watching television and worrying about money, and she had always considered herself unlucky because it seemed like good things happened to other people, but never to her, and she had given up hope of ever experiencing real abundance. One evening, Sandra was cleaning out a closet when she found an old book that had belonged to her grandmother, and when she opened it, she discovered it was a collection of Florence Scovel Shinn's teachings, and there was a handwritten note from her grandmother that said, "These words changed my life, and I hope someday they will change yours too." And Sandra felt a strange tingling sensation. As she read these words, Sandra learned about the frequency of infinite provision and the power of the decree, "I am supplied." And even though she had never been interested in spiritual teachings, something about these ideas resonated deeply, and she decided to try the practice for 30 days. And that first night, she repeated, "I am supplied," until she fell asleep, and she noticed that the words seemed to vibrate in her chest. The very next morning, Sandra experienced her first micro sign, and as she was walking to work, she found a $20 bill on the sidewalk, and normally she would have looked around for the owner, but something prompted her to keep walking, and when she picked up the money, she noticed that it was crisp and new, as if it had just come from the bank, and she felt a strange sense that this was a message. Later that same day, Sandra's boss, Dr. Martinez, asked her to stay a few minutes after work because he wanted to discuss something with her, and Sandra immediately worried that she was in trouble. But Dr. Martinez explained that he had been impressed with her work and her reliability, and he wanted to give her a raise to $30,000 a year. And Sandra felt tears coming to her eyes, because this was the first raise she had received in 4 years. On the third day, Sandra noticed that people were treating her differently, and patients were commenting on how cheerful she seemed, and Dr. Martinez mentioned that there was a different energy in the office. And Sandra realized that something about her frequency had shifted, and people were responding to this change, even though she had not consciously done anything differently. The medium signs began appearing during the second week, and Sandra received a phone call from a cousin she had not heard from in 15 years, and the cousin explained that she was moving across the country and wondered if Sandra would be interested in house sitting for 6 months. And the house was a beautiful 3-bedroom home with a garden and a swimming pool, and Sandra could live there, rent-free. Sandra also received an unexpected check for $863 from an overpayment on her car insurance from 2 years earlier, and the insurance company apologized for the delay and explained that they had recently discovered the error during a computer system upgrade, and Sandra marveled at the perfect timing because she had just been worrying about how to pay for new tires. During the third week, Sandra was grocery shopping when she overheard a conversation between 2 women about a part-time job doing bookkeeping for a small business. And Sandra had some experience with bookkeeping from a previous job, and she approached the women and discovered that they were looking for someone with her exact qualifications, and the job paid $15 an hour for 20 hours a week. The bookkeeping job was perfect because Sandra could do most of the work from home, and it would not interfere with her job at the dental office, and the additional income would give her an extra $1,200 a month, which was more money than she had ever had available for savings and discretionary spending. And Sandra began to understand that these opportunities were not random, but were responding to her new frequency. The macro signs began manifesting during the 4th week, and Sandra received a letter from an attorney informing her that a distant relative had passed away and left her a small inheritance. And when Sandra met with the attorney, she discovered that the inheritance included $10,000 in cash and a small cottage on a lake that had been in the family for generations. The cottage needed some repairs, but it was structurally sound and beautifully located, and Sandra realized that she could either sell it for a substantial profit or keep it as a retirement home. And when she visited the cottage for the first time, she felt a deep sense of peace and belonging that she had never experienced before, and she decided to keep it and gradually renovate it. Sandra also discovered that her new bookkeeping client was expanding his business and needed someone to manage the office full-time, and he offered Sandra a position as office manager with a salary of $45,000 a year, plus benefits, and the opportunity to work remotely part of the time. And Sandra realized that this would allow her to live at the cottage and commute to the city only when necessary. Within 1 month, Sandra's income had increased from $26,000 to $45,000, plus the inheritance, and she had gone from living paycheck to having more abundance than she had ever imagined. And she had moved from a cramped apartment to a beautiful cottage, and she had transformed from feeling unlucky to feeling blessed. Sandra later said that the most important lesson was learning to recognize signs as communication rather than coincidence, and she realized that the universe had been trying to communicate with her for years, but she had not known the language. And once she learned to read the signs, she could see that her path to abundance had been orchestrated with perfect precision. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that signs are like breadcrumbs leading you to your demonstration, and each sign confirms that you are on the right path and encourages you to continue trusting the process even when you cannot see the final destination. And signs are the universe's way of saying yes. You are aligned, and yes, your supply is on its way. The language of signs operates on the principle of correspondence, which states that what is true in the invisible realm must eventually become true in the visible realm. And signs are glimpses of your future reality bleeding through into your present experience, and they serve as proof that your demonstration is already complete in the quantum field. While you rest tonight, your sensitivity to signs is increasing, and tomorrow you will begin to notice the micro signs that confirm your alignment with infinite provision, and you will recognize the medium signs that bridge the invisible and visible realms, and you will trust the macro signs that represent the full manifestation of your abundance and continue resting, because what comes next is understanding divine timing. There is no time in the divine mind, only perfect sequence, and divine timing is not about when things happen, but about when you are ready to receive them. And Florence Scovel Shinn understood that the universe operates according to perfect timing, that takes into account not just what you desire, but what will serve your highest good and the highest good of all concerned. And sometimes what appears to be delay is actually divine protection. The quantum field operates outside of linear time, and in the realm of pure possibility, your demonstration already exists in perfect completion, but it must filter through the dimensions of time and space to reach your physical experience. And this process requires perfect coordination of countless variables and factors that your conscious mind could never orchestrate, but divine intelligence handles effortlessly. When you decree, "I am supplied," you are not creating supply in the future, but claiming supply that already exists in the eternal now. And the apparent delay between decree and demonstration is not the universe working to create your abundance, but the universe organizing circumstances, people, and opportunities to deliver your abundance in the most perfect way possible. I want to tell you about Thomas Mitchell, who was 57 years old when he learned about divine timing through an experience that tested his faith and taught him to trust the perfect intelligence that orchestrates all supply. And Thomas was a commercial painter who had been struggling to keep his small business afloat, and he was facing the possibility of bankruptcy and the loss of everything he had worked to build. Thomas had started his painting business 22 years earlier with nothing but a pickup truck and a set of brushes, and he had built a reputation for quality work and honest dealing. But the economic downturn had caused many businesses to postpone renovations and new construction projects, and Thomas was facing a debt of $68,000 to suppliers and equipment rental companies. Thomas had always been a hard worker who believed that success came through effort and persistence, but no amount of work could create customers who did not exist, and Thomas watched his bank account dwindle week by week, and he began to fear that he would lose his house and his business and his reputation, and he felt like he was drowning in circumstances beyond his control. Thomas received a final notice from his largest creditor stating that he had exactly 30 days to pay $24,000 or face immediate legal action, and that same week his truck broke down and required repairs that would cost $3,000. And Thomas sat in his kitchen staring at the bills spread across the table, and he felt more hopeless than he had ever felt in his adult life. It was during this crisis that Thomas's wife Helen gave him a book by Florence Scovel Shinn and told him that her sister had found comfort in these teachings during her own difficult period. And Thomas was skeptical because he had never been interested in spiritual matters. But Helen convinced him to read just one chapter and see if it offered any practical wisdom. Thomas learned about the principle of infinite supply and the power of the spoken word. And even though his logical mind resisted these ideas, something deeper in him recognized their truth, and he decided to experiment with the decree, "I am supplied," even though everything in his circumstances suggested the opposite. And that first night, he repeated these words with as much conviction as he could muster. For 12 nights, Thomas continued this practice, and each night he felt a little more peaceful and a little more trusting, even though nothing in his external circumstances had changed, and his creditors were still demanding payment, and his truck was still broken, and new customers were not appearing, and Thomas began to wonder if he was deluding himself with false hope. On the 13th morning, Thomas was tempted to give up the practice and accept that bankruptcy was inevitable. But something inside him urged him to continue for just one more day. And that afternoon, he received a phone call from a construction company that he had never heard of. And the man on the phone said they had gotten Thomas's name from a satisfied customer, and they needed a painting contractor for a large commercial project. When Thomas met with the construction manager the next day, he learned that the project was painting the interior and exterior of a new office complex, and the contract was worth $85,000, which was more than enough to pay all his debts and provide working capital for the next year. And the project would begin immediately, and Thomas would receive 50% of the payment up front. Thomas was amazed by the perfect timing, because the phone call had come exactly one day before his final deadline with the creditor. And when he signed the contract, he realized that if this opportunity had appeared earlier, he might not have been desperate enough to accept such a large project that would require him to hire additional workers and expand his operation. The construction manager also mentioned that they had several other projects planned for the following year, and they were looking for a reliable painting contractor to handle all their work. And if Thomas performed well on this project, they would offer him an exclusive contract that would guarantee steady work for the next 5 years. And Thomas realized that what had seemed like disaster was actually preparation for the greatest opportunity of his career. As Thomas reflected on the timing of events, he realized that everything had unfolded with perfect precision. And if the opportunity had come too early, he would not have been ready to handle such a large contract. And if it had come too late, he would have already lost his business and his credibility, and the divine intelligence had orchestrated every detail to serve his highest good. Thomas also realized that the financial pressure had forced him to examine his relationship with supply and had opened him to spiritual principles that he would never have considered during comfortable times. And the crisis had been the catalyst for his spiritual awakening and his discovery of infinite provision as his true source rather than his own efforts. The 12 days of decreeing had not created the opportunity, but had prepared Thomas to recognize and receive the opportunity that was already arranged for him. And the apparent delay had actually been divine timing, ensuring that all the pieces were perfectly aligned before the demonstration manifested in his physical experience. Thomas completed the office complex project ahead of schedule and under budget, and his quality of work impressed the construction company so much that they immediately offered him the exclusive 5-year contract. And within 6 months, Thomas had hired 8 additional workers and moved to a larger facility, and his business had grown beyond anything he had previously imagined possible. Thomas later said that the most important lesson was understanding that divine timing is always perfect timing, even when it appears to be late or early. And he learned to trust the intelligence that sees the whole picture rather than trying to force things to happen according to his limited perspective. And he realized that patience is not passive, waiting, but active trust in divine orchestration. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that when you align with infinite provision, you step into the stream of divine timing, where everything happens at exactly the right moment for your highest good. And delay is not denial, but divine arrangement, ensuring that all conditions are perfect for your demonstration to manifest in the most beneficial way possible. Divine timing operates on the principle of readiness and ripeness. And just as fruit appears on the tree when it is perfectly ripe, your demonstration appears in your experience when you are perfectly ready to receive it and steward it wisely. And the universe knows when you are ready, even when you think you are ready sooner. While you sleep tonight, you are synchronizing with divine timing, and your subconscious is releasing any anxiety about when your abundance will appear. And tomorrow, you will trust the perfect intelligence that orchestrates all supply, and you will know that your demonstration is already complete in the quantum field and is manifesting according to perfect timing. When you decree infinite provision, you are not decreeing alone, but joining an invisible congregation of souls around the world who are aligned with abundance, and this collective field amplifies the power of every individual decree. and creates a momentum that makes manifestation easier for everyone who participates. And Florence Scovel Shinn understood that abundance is not competitive, but collaborative, and when one person overflows, it creates space for others to overflow. The quantum field responds to collective intention with exponential power, and when thousands of people simultaneously hold the frequency of infinite provision, they create what scientists call a morphic field, which is an invisible structure that makes it easier for others to access the same frequency. And this is why abundance often appears in clusters, and why prosperity consciousness spreads through communities like ripples in a pond. You are never alone in your decreeing, because there is an invisible community of souls who are awake while you sleep and sleeping while you are awake. And together, you are creating a continuous stream of abundance consciousness that flows around the planet 24 hours a day. And your decree adds your voice to this cosmic chorus and strengthens the field for everyone. I want to share with you the profound experience of Gloria Peterson, who was 54 years old when she discovered the power of collective witnessing, and Gloria had been struggling as a single mother, raising 2 teenage sons after her husband left her for another woman, and she was working 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet, and feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility of providing for her children alone. Gloria worked as a cashier at a grocery store during the day and cleaned offices at night, and between her 2 jobs, she was earning barely enough to cover rent and basic expenses, and she had no savings and no extended family to help her, and she often lay awake at night, worrying about how she would pay for her son's college education and what would happen if she got sick and could not work. Gloria had always been a private person who did not like to share her problems with others, but the stress of her situation was affecting her health and her relationship with her sons, and she was becoming depressed and anxious, and she felt like she was failing as a mother and as a provider, and she began to think that maybe her sons would be better off living with their father, who could afford to give them opportunities she could not provide. One evening, Gloria was cleaning an office building when she found a book that someone had left in the break room, and the book was a collection of Florence Scovel Shinn's teachings. And Gloria was so tired and discouraged that she sat down and began reading. And something about the teachings spoke directly to her heart, and she felt a spark of hope that she had not felt in months. Gloria learned about the principle of infinite provision and the power of collective consciousness, and she discovered that she was not alone in her struggle, but part of a larger community of souls who were learning to access abundance through spiritual principles. And the book suggested that when you decree with the awareness that others are decreeing with you, the power is multiplied exponentially. That night, Gloria decided to try an experiment, and instead of decreeing, "I am supplied," she decided to decree, "We are supplied," with the intention of including all the single mothers and struggling families and anyone who needed abundance. And she repeated, "We are supplied," until she fell asleep, and she felt a sense of connection and support that she had not experienced since her divorce. Gloria continued this practice for several nights, and she began to feel like she was part of an invisible network of souls who were supporting each other through their shared intention for abundance. And she started thinking about her situation differently, and instead of feeling isolated and overwhelmed, she began to feel connected and supported by forces she could not see but could definitely feel. On the 7th day of her practice, Gloria received an unexpected phone call from the manager of a hotel who had heard about her excellent work ethic from the office cleaning company, and the hotel manager offered Gloria a position as head of housekeeping with a salary of $42,000 a year, plus benefits, and the opportunity for advancement. The hotel position was perfect for Gloria because it was only 1 job instead of 2, and the hours were regular and predictable, and the salary was more than she had been earning from both her part-time jobs combined, and Gloria realized that this opportunity had appeared exactly when she had started including others in her decreeing and focusing on collective abundance rather than personal lack. But the most extraordinary part of the experience happened 3 days later when Gloria was training for her new position, and she met another woman named Maria, who was also starting a new job at the hotel. And during their lunch break, Maria mentioned that she had been decreeing for abundance using teachings from Florence Scovel. Shinn and Gloria felt chills when she realized that they had both been part of the same invisible field. Maria explained that she had been a single mother struggling with similar challenges, and she had been using the same practice of decreeing, "We are supplied," instead of "I am supplied," and she had received the job offer on the same day as Gloria. And they both realized that their individual demonstrations had been connected through their shared intention for collective abundance. As Gloria and Maria talked, they discovered that they had both been visualizing not just their own success, but the success of all single mothers who were struggling to provide for their children. And they had both been sending out intention for opportunities to appear for anyone who needed them. And they realized that their jobs at the hotel were part of a larger pattern of mutual support and manifestation. Within a month, Gloria and Maria had become close friends, and they started a support group for single mothers in their community, where they shared the principles they had learned from Florence Scovel Shinn and taught other women how to access infinite provision through collective decreeing and spiritual practice. And the group grew from 2 members to over 20 members within 6 months. The support group became a powerful demonstration of collective abundance, and as each woman learned to decree, "We are supplied," instead of "I am supplied," the group began manifesting opportunities for everyone, and members found better jobs and received unexpected financial assistance and discovered resources they had not known existed, and the collective field amplified every individual intention. Gloria was promoted to assistant hotel manager within 8 months, and her increased salary allowed her to save money for her son's college education. And she also started a small consulting business helping other hotels improve their housekeeping operations. And she realized that her abundance was creating opportunities for others, just as others' abundance had created opportunities for her. Gloria later said that the most important discovery was understanding that abundance is not a limited resource that you have to compete for, but an unlimited resource that expands when it is shared, and when you include others in your intention for prosperity, you tap into a collective power that is far greater than anything you can access alone. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that when you recognize the interconnectedness of all life, you understand that your abundance and others' abundance are not separate, but part of the same infinite flow. And when you decree for collective prosperity, you become a channel for abundance to flow not just to you, but through you to everyone who needs it. The field of collective abundance is strongest when people are sleeping, because the conscious mind is not creating barriers between individual and collective intention. And tonight, while you rest, you are joining thousands of souls around the world who are aligned with infinite provision, and your decree strengthens the field for everyone, and everyone's decree strengthens the field for you. Continue resting and know that you are supported by an invisible community of abundance, and your overflow creates space for others to overflow, and others' overflow creates space for your overflow. And together, you are weaving a web of prosperity that encompasses the entire planet. And what comes next is the culmination of all these teachings in one final story. As we approach the final moments of this teaching, I want to share with you the most profound story of transformation that demonstrates every principle we have explored together. And this is the story of Judith Anderson, who was 56 years old when she experienced what she later called the miracle of complete surrender. And Judith's journey shows us how frequency and identity and resistance and signs and timing and collective field all work together to create demonstration that exceeds our wildest dreams. We have traveled together through the landscape of infinite provision, and you have learned about the frequency that never fails, and the power of word as creation, and the importance of identity that precedes manifestation, and how to work with resistance instead of against it, and how to read the signs that confirm your alignment, and how to trust divine timing, and how to participate in the collective field of abundance. Judith Anderson lived in a small apartment in downtown Portland, where she had moved after her divorce 10 years earlier, and she worked as a freelance graphic designer, making just enough money to cover her basic expenses, but never enough to feel secure or abundant. And Judith had always been creative and talented, but she had never learned how to translate her artistic gifts into financial prosperity. And she often felt like she was living on the margins of life. Judith's situation became critical when she was diagnosed with a serious autoimmune condition that required expensive medical treatment, and her health insurance had been canceled because she could not afford the premium increases, and the medical bills were accumulating faster than she could pay them. And she was facing the possibility of losing her apartment and having to move back in with her aging mother, who lived on Social Security. The total amount Judith owed for medical expenses was $93,000, which seemed impossible for someone with her limited income, and she had already applied for assistance programs and been denied because she earned slightly too much to qualify, but far too little to actually pay the bills. And Judith felt trapped in a nightmare where every option seemed to lead to more problems. Judith had 2 adult children who were both struggling with their own financial challenges and could not help her. And she had no other family members with resources, and she had already borrowed money from friends until she was too embarrassed to ask for more help. And she felt completely alone and abandoned by life, and wondered if she would ever experience security or abundance. The stress of her situation was making her autoimmune condition worse, and the worse her condition became, the more expensive her treatment became. And Judith felt caught in a downward spiral that seemed to have no bottom, and she began to think that maybe she would be better off if she just stopped fighting and let whatever was going to happen happen. It was during this darkest period of her life that Judith's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, knocked on her door and handed her a small wrapped package and said, "This belonged to my late husband, and I think you are meant to have it now." And when Judith opened the package, she found a worn copy of Florence Scovel Shinn's complete works with handwritten notes in the margins, and a letter from Mr. Chen addressed to whoever finds this book. The letter explained that Mr. Chen had used these teachings to transform his life from poverty to prosperity, and he had written the letter hoping that someday these teachings would help another person in desperate need, and he had instructed his wife to give the book to someone who needed it after he passed away. And Mrs. Chen said she had been waiting for the right person, and she knew Judith was that person. Judith spent the entire night reading the book, and something about Florence Scovel Shinn's teachings resonated with her at a level deeper than her conscious mind, and she felt like these words were speaking directly to her soul and offering her a lifeline in the ocean of despair where she had been drowning, and she decided to commit completely to this path, regardless of how impossible it seemed. Judith learned that her fundamental problem was not lack of money, but lack of alignment with the frequency of infinite provision. And she had been vibrating at the frequency of struggle and limitation for so long that it had become her default state, and she needed to completely reprogram her consciousness to match the frequency of abundance and overflow. That first night, Judith repeated the decree, "I am supplied from the infinite storehouse of God," until she fell asleep, and she noticed that something inside her chest began to vibrate differently, and she felt a peace that she had not experienced since before her health crisis began. And she decided to trust this feeling even though nothing in her circumstances had changed. For 14 nights, Judith continued this practice, and each night she felt more aligned with abundance and less identified with her problems. And she began to experience herself as a spiritual being who was temporarily having a human experience rather than a human being who was struggling with spiritual concepts, and this shift in identity was the foundation for everything that followed. During the second week, Judith began to notice signs that her frequency was shifting, and she found small amounts of money in unexpected places and received unexpected checks for work she had forgotten about, and people began commenting that she seemed different and more radiant despite her challenging circumstances. And Judith realized that the inner transformation was beginning to create outer changes. On the 15th day, Judith experienced what she later called the moment of complete surrender, and she was sitting in her small apartment looking at a stack of medical bills when she suddenly felt overwhelmed by the futility of trying to manage her situation through her own efforts, and she literally got down on her knees and said out loud, "I cannot do this alone, and I surrender completely to infinite intelligence." In that moment of surrender, something shifted in the quantum field around Judith, and she felt a presence that was both intimate and infinite, and she heard words in her mind that said, "Your demonstration is already complete, and you are about to witness the perfect orchestration of infinite supply." And Judith felt a certainty that transcended all logic and evidence. The next morning, Judith received a phone call from a lawyer who explained that she had been named as a beneficiary in the will of a distant relative she had never met, and this relative had been following Judith's artistic career through mutual family connections, and had been impressed by her talent and perseverance, and had left her a substantial inheritance. When Judith met with the lawyer, she discovered that the inheritance included not only enough money to pay all her medical bills, but also a trust fund that would provide her with a monthly income for the rest of her life, and a small art studio that the relative had built but never used, and the studio came with professional equipment and connections to galleries and collectors. The inheritance totaled over $400,000, which was more money than Judith had ever imagined having. And the monthly income from the trust was enough to cover all her living expenses and medical treatments without her having to work unless she wanted to. And Judith realized that she was financially free for the first time in her adult life. But the most extraordinary part of the inheritance was a letter from the relative explaining that she had been watching Judith's artistic development and wanted to support her in creating art that would inspire others, and she had established the trust specifically to give Judith the freedom to create without financial pressure and to share her gifts with the world. Within 3 months, Judith had moved into the art studio and begun creating a series of paintings based on her spiritual journey and her experience of infinite provision, and her art began attracting attention from collectors and galleries, and she found herself earning more money from her art than she had ever earned from graphic design. Judith also used part of her inheritance to establish a foundation that provides financial assistance to artists who are facing health crises, and the foundation has helped dozens of creative people continue their work during difficult periods. And Judith realized that her abundance was creating abundance for others, just as Florence Scovel Shinn had taught. Looking back on her experience, Judith realized that every element of her journey had been perfectly orchestrated to bring her to this moment of complete demonstration, and the health crisis had been the catalyst that forced her to surrender her limited beliefs and open to infinite possibility, and the timing had been perfect for her to receive and steward such abundance. Judith's transformation demonstrates every principle we have explored together, and shows us that no matter how desperate your circumstances appear, infinite provision is always available when you align with the frequency of abundance and trust, the perfect intelligence that orchestrates all supply, and surrender your resistance to receiving what has always been yours. This is the story that seals everything we have shared and proves that infinite provision is not a theory, but a living reality that becomes your experience when you tune into the frequency that never fails, and embodying the identity that precedes manifestation and surrender to the divine. Timing that orchestrates perfect demonstration. Breathe deeply with me now, even if you are sleeping, because your body knows and your subconscious knows, and the moment of the final decree has arrived, and it is not your decree, but the decree. And what has always been true is only being spoken through you. And you are about to receive the seal that activates infinite provision frequency permanently in your consciousness. Even if you are sleeping, something in you is awake, and this part of you never sleeps, and it hears every word I will speak now, and it recognizes the authority behind these words, and it responds to the frequency of truth that transcends all doubt and limitation. And this part of you that is always awake is your connection to the infinite source of all supply. And through this connection, the final activation occurs. This part of you knows that you are not separate from infinite provision, but you are an expression of infinite provision, and you are not seeking abundance, but you are embodying abundance, and you are not hoping for supply, but you are claiming supply, and through the power of the spoken word, this truth becomes sealed in your consciousness forever. Breathe with me now, and let each breath carry you deeper into the frequency of infinite provision, and let each exhalation release any remaining resistance to abundance. and let each inhalation fill you with the knowing that you are supplied from the inexhaustible storehouse of the infinite. And this breath is the bridge between the limited self and the unlimited self. Feel the vibration in your chest as these words enter your energy field, and know that these are not just sounds, but keys that unlock dimensions of possibility and frequencies that reorganize the quantum field around you. And these words carry the authority of spiritual law, and they create what they declare, and they manifest what they decree. I will now speak the words that activate infinite provision frequency in your consciousness, and these words will enter your subconscious and reprogram your personal electromagnetic field and align you permanently with the flow of abundance that never ceases. And you do not need to understand how this works, but only to allow it to work through you. I am tuned to infinite provision frequency. My supply overflows naturally, and it cannot be otherwise. I am tuned to infinite provision frequency. My supply overflows naturally, and it cannot be otherwise. I am tuned to infinite provision frequency. My supply overflows naturally, and it cannot be otherwise. I am tuned to infinite provision frequency. My supply overflows naturally, and it cannot be otherwise. I am tuned to infinite provision frequency. My supply overflows naturally, and it cannot be otherwise. I am tuned to infinite provision frequency. My supply overflows naturally, and it cannot be otherwise. Tercera, onda, tom de decreto, cosmico. I am tuned to infinite provision frequency. My supply overflows naturally, and it cannot be otherwise. I am tuned to infinite provision frequency. My supply overflows naturally, and it cannot be otherwise. I am tuned to infinite provision frequency. My supply overflows naturally, and it cannot be otherwise. Now receive the decree of your true identity as a channel for infinite abundance, and let these words penetrate every cell of your body and every level of your consciousness, and let them establish your permanent identity as one who is supplied from the inexhaustible source that never fails. I am a channel for infinite abundance. Provision flows through me constantly, and it cannot be otherwise. I am a channel for infinite abundance. Provision flows through me constantly, and it cannot be otherwise. I am a channel for infinite abundance. Provision flows through me constantly, and it cannot be otherwise. I am a channel for infinite abundance. Provision flows through me constantly, and it cannot be otherwise. I am a channel for infinite abundance. Provision flows through me constantly, and it cannot be otherwise. I am a channel for infinite abundance. Provision flows through me constantly, and it cannot be otherwise. I am a channel for infinite abundance. Provision flows through me constantly, and it cannot be otherwise. I am a channel for infinite abundance. Provision flows through me constantly, and it cannot be otherwise. I am a channel for infinite abundance. Provision flows through me constantly, and it cannot be otherwise. And so it is sealed in the quantum field, and so it is established in consciousness, and so it is manifested in experience. Infinite provision frequency, activated overflow is inevitable. Your supply is guaranteed, and it cannot be otherwise, and it cannot be otherwise, and it cannot be otherwise. And so it is, and so it is, and so it is. You can continue resting in perfect peace because everything that needed to enter has already entered, and everything that needed to be activated has already been activated, and you are now permanently tuned to the frequency of infinite provision. And this frequency will continue broadcasting through your consciousness 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When you wake, you will be different, not because something changed, but because you remembered what was always true, and you will begin to make choices and take actions and speak words that align with your identity as a channel for infinite abundance, and supply will begin flowing toward you in ways that surpass your understanding. Your bank account may not show this truth immediately, but your frequency shows this truth now, and your identity carries this truth always, and your future demonstrates this truth inevitably. Because you are no longer seeking abundance, you are being abundance, and abundance must flow through you because this is the nature of who you are. Rest now in the certainty that infinite provision frequency is activated and operating, and tomorrow you will wake as one who is supplied, and next week you will live as one who is supplied, and next month you will demonstrate as one who is supplied because this is your true nature, and this is your divine inheritance. Sleep deeply knowing that while you rest, the universe is reorganizing itself around your new frequency, and opportunities are being prepared, and resources are being aligned, and people are being guided to you, and you are being guided to them, and everything is being orchestrated for your highest good, and the highest good of all. Your supply is as certain as the sunrise, and as inevitable as the changing seasons, and as reliable as the beating of your heart, because you are not separate from the source, but you are an expression of the source, and the source supplies itself through you naturally and endlessly and joyfully. It is finished, it is done, it is sealed. Rest now, rest well, rest in abundance. The frequency of infinite provision flows through you now and always, and it cannot be otherwise.